Welcome back to episode 6 of our deep dive into Heaven's Vault. We're just about to see what happened to Renba. So spoilers ahoy. From here out on, it's all spoilers, just in case you're wondering. So, I got a couple of problems with this particular plot point. They aren't necessarily problems, but essentially what we're thinking about here is this ship crash landing or exploding or something similar, and then just dying here on the moon. But that doesn't really make any sense because we know that Renba already stole a whole bunch of shit here. So if Renba already stole it and then left, why did he come back to blow up? And if he got shot down or exploded before he got here in the first place, then how did he steal the shit? Janikwi and Renba are the same. It's his first name, last name thing. Mm-hmm. So now the idea is that he was trying to launch by putting explosives underneath his ship. It's hard to imagine that. I mean, that's really kind of silly. It's like a Looney Tunes sort of solution. Who knows? That conversation was different the first time. Maybe I just missed it. This has a few of the same problems that Phoenix Wright has, in that you frequently have ideas that you build up in your head about what's going on, and then the game will talk about something else. It doesn't really understand that you are currently on a specific track, and it doesn't know how to tell you to get on the track it's on. So it's like in Phoenix Wright when you're like, oh, but I discovered this thing that makes this person we're arguing against, he's obviously guilty, and you're like, I'll show it, and it's like, no, that has nothing to do with it. It's like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? And it's really, really hard to be, to get directed back into the right space because your brain is off doing this thing on its own. And that's definitely still true here. But I believe that that's a solvable problem if we're using a context engine like this, because we understand what contexts the player is currently talking about. Cold. So if I, the player, have just uncovered a bunch of ancient emperor treasures, then I'm probably thinking about the ancient emperor. And if you want me to think about whether or not Renba crashed, you need to set up like just a context blurb that pulls that context up in my brain. Similarly, if you want me to talk about the robot and what the robot's programmed to do and stuff like that, I would need to be dragged around to that context. You'd need to tell me what I'm supposed to be caring about. And that's something that this game does do occasionally, but it's something that would be easy to automate. You can just tag the different contexts with a starter blurb, and if context hasn't come up recently, you just say the starter blurb before you say the rest of the lines. One of the other problems I've got with this particular level, I like this idea, but I can clearly see down into the hole. I can see every area very, very clearly, and I can clearly see that there's no corpse. So it's like, where would the corpse be? There's clearly no corpse in there. There's a lot of other things missing too. There's no supplies, nothing. Now, maybe it's just that their assets weren't indicative enough, and they didn't want to, spend a lot of time trying to make that feel like a fully laden ship that someone died on. But as someone who visited this the first time, I was like, well, that's clearly, I mean, that's clearly not Renba, because there's no corpse in there. There's no bones or blood or anything. If he exploded himself, trust me, you'd see some blood and some arms. And that's like super clean. There's nothing down there. There's not even furniture. All right, we found a new location. Nice. See, now we just said that he detonated himself to try and get off the moon, and now you are immediately saying that he fell from the sky. That's the problem with these context games, but I think that that's a rough edge that we can sand off. All we have to do is make sure that we understand which false leads we're putting in and when they need to be taken off the table, because the player knows enough to just brush them off. We could even brush them off in conversation. Like he could say Renba obviously crashed, and we could be like, what? Are you an idiot? Which would make us feel very smart, and would also remind the player of what we've learned actually happened. Oh, dismal. Now, because I had not just yet as an option, I know that there is at least one point of interest that I've missed. Because if you have hit all of the points of interest, she says, don't pester me. But she didn't say that. I am actually a little bit concerned because I don't think I missed anything. I think I actually got everything. Maybe don't pester me is something she doesn't say on this particular moon because of an event that we get later. Well, I guess we will just manually have him take us back, because I can't think of what we missed, and this game is not aggressive about it. If we miss stuff, then it'll just tell us later. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Having the player bring that up is a bad call. You should have the robot bring it up, or some other NPC, so the player can then tell them how wrong they are. Just because that will let the player feel smart, and it won't make the player and their player character have a disconnect in terms of what they think they know.
Darkness.
This is a cool scene. So here we're learning some of the local story. So we learned about things like the Emperor and stuff like that. But right now we're learning that Miari is doing something weird, and Renba is doing something even weirder. We call it the Nothing. These look like big, strong hands. You know, maybe if you tell me where it is, I can go and investigate it. You will? Oh, interesting. Now that is a really cool little concept. So this was a strange little thing to help us get into the story, and it worked pretty well. I think it might have been better if it had happened just after we found the crown or something similar, to make it so that the crown felt super important. So we also see we're learning a little bit about the hopper works, and we're supposed to. I could keep talking, but there is a problem with this conversation. One of the things. There we are. That's what I wanted him to say. Yeah. So one of the things about this event is that the hopper literally defied the laws of physics to get us here, which is something that is a little bit odd, and she doesn't really make anything of. She doesn't say how'd that even happen. She just assumes that Renba did something to the robot, but in reality, he did something to the concept of a hopper, which is quite a thing. In addition, if we do this minor conversation cue that we've got down there, we actually end up giving away a lot of stuff to the robot, which is strange, because I would really, really want that to be something where I was given a clear option, like, oh, are you really sure that you want to tell the robot this really important thing? How much information the various NPCs have, how much information you give them, is a really important point in terms of how I think about these kinds of stories. So when the game just gives away secrets, when the game just gives away secrets that I wasn't willing to give out, then I would be a little bit nervous about it. I'd be like, that doesn't feel right. The character is doing something that I wouldn't do. She just gave away an incredibly valuable secret to a person who almost certainly should never have been told that. But in terms of how the game is written, obviously it's not going to matter. They're not going to hinge a major plot point on whether or not you hit Q. So that's like just a little bit of a disconnect. But I think that there is a lot you can do with context engines and keeping things secret from other players, because the context flags that we have on that nice little timeline are just as good when we apply them to other characters. There's no reason that the other characters can't also have a timeline with flags on it. Probably a simpler one. There's no need to go into that much detail. And here's where we learn that this crown is not just a big hunk of metal. It is some kind of machine. So at this point, we have a couple of options as to how we want to play this game. This is where the game starts to really open up, and we are allowed to start to think for ourselves. So in this case, I have just volunteered to take it to Arroy. The people on Arroy and the people back on Iox both would like the crown, obviously. Arroy doesn't even know what the crown is, really. But it's pretty clear that if I take it to her, we're going to learn a lot more about it. And if I take it back to Iox, we'll probably just lose it. That was my thought when I first played the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some tracks. What we're going to do first is we're going to go return this figurine to its rightful home. That's the robe. That's not the figurine. That's the figurine. There it is. Yep. So what we're going to want to do is head off to Maerzi, drop that thing off. And then we will go over to our friend Oroy. They're basically on the way to each other. I don't know how this game measures time. I don't know whether going to Meierzi costs us time in terms of plot progression. But I do know that it's what I would have chosen to do. So that's what we're going to do. Plus, it's a short little thing, so I might be able to get all of Meierzi in this episode. I like how they tell you the path you're taking via the wires and so on and so forth. Well, let's go ahead and see how fast we can get to Meierzi. We're going to try and stick to the centers of these rivers so that we get a nice bit of velocity out of them. Get some rapids going. They're always fun. Wah! Gotta go fast. Woo!
We set course once more for Meierzi. I found myself looking forward to it. It was a good place, despite the people.
And again, we're reminded that a place is interesting, mostly because people find it interesting, rather than because it was written to be interesting. Now, I know that there are things on the way to Meierzi. There's like wrecks and stuff. But I don't know whether I'm taking the same paths or whether they're in the same place. They're not really very interesting. They're just like little teeny side hops. So there's not really any big worry about finding them. What a nice view. Only problem with this view is that it frequently errors out due to the camera clipping plane being set really short. Here's where we're learning about the loop, which is what I was referencing when I said that double O stood for it. So we're learning some nice dialogue. These downtime elements are an absolutely critical part of any story game because the downtime is a time when the player gets to pause and think, but it's also a time when you get to tell the players new stuff because they're not on any specific context. They're between contexts, so they can learn more things.
The soft, wet wind of Meierzi hadn't seemed gentle before. I could see it now. Maybe Remba really had liked this place.
Let's go pig mucking.
I had the clay figurine with me, in my bag, wrapped up safely in a cloth.
So this is just a stop off. I'm not having any control over anything except for how fast the text crawls.
Everything on Meierzi was as we'd left it. The flowers still bloomed. The water still bubbled.
Where did I find this? I didn't want to tell him it was in the middle of a hurricane. You made me say that. It's fine. I'm tight-lipped. So this is a hermit's figurine. It's built for for people who go far away and want to remain true to the faith. I think this is the same phrase. I remember this double us. And then there's the waters. You do. The first time I played the game, I actually knew enough to read it. Unfortunately, I got it right the first time. And I'm really annoyed that I didn't get a chance to even guess it this time. But I guess it's the same result either way. It's just that the random draw didn't give me any of those words, so I didn't have the option to solve it. Oh well. Talk about your contrived finds. Got to give the players a reward for rewinding it. Got to give the players a reward for returning it. So here's another clue. Very, very blunt. I would have preferred it if maybe the guy had given us something in exchange. You know, well, thank you, we can trust you now. Here's this other thing that they left behind. That would have at least made it a little bit less arbitrary. But whatever. Although, to be honest, the foil couldn't have been the reward if that was the case, because Renba had nothing to do with the foil, as far as I know. I think I'm like 90% sure that foil, or that figurine was the Emperor's figurine, and Renba. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. It doesn't matter. The point is, you could have made it some other sort of clue. Gee, I wonder if I know anybody who might be able to help us. Yeah. All right, so we're done with that. What we're going to do is head out for... Yeah, let's get out of here. What we're going to do is we're going to head out for El-bereth now, where our buddy lives. We're not going to get any El-bereth done in this episode. We are going to stop as soon as we arrive. So if you are tired of listening to me, you can just skip to the end, because all I'm going to do is talk a little bit more over a trip. This map is actually a nice surprise to me. I didn't expect the game to have a map in it like this, but it's sort of like the idea of like in a sorry, what am I trying to say? Sort of like in GTA, where you can pick a destination and then the road will tell you, turn left here, turn right here. It's just like that, except for it also integrates into the narrative of the game, because by picking a place, you are picking the next major plot point that you want to hit, or the next major context you want to explore, depending on how you think about it. So that sort of setup is really a nice way to do things. It feels very natural, because you're just picking a destination and then you're just sailing to the destination. But by doing so, the game automatically knows what you're trying to accomplish. And even though you're on a trip there, it can take advantage of the time while you're on this trip to reestablish any contexts that it may want you to be aware of when you hit this next place. Like, do we want to know more about El-bereth before we hit El-bereth? It was our home, so it would be nice if, one of these dialogues that popped up talked about the nature of our home, or made us feel for people, or let us know what to expect from a Roy. I don't know if they do that in this particular case, but it's something that's very easy to do, because you know what context the player is paying attention to, and you've got loads of time to do whatever you want. And this time is great. It's like super downtime. You can talk about anything. Oh, look, we got a little thingy. Let's see whether we can catch this little thingy. Hooray! I don't think that that was supposed to pop up from quite that far away, but it's fine.
And I was alone. Then it came back.
I love that delivery. So we got a nebula chart. That's interesting. I don't think I've uncovered that one very recently. Usually those have writings for you to decipher, but not that one.
They say on El-bereth, if you sail too far,
There you go.
you'll meet yourself coming back.
That's the sort of thing I was talking about.
But I've sailed plenty far, and I still don't know who I'm supposed to be.
Splushk. I think I might have taken the wrong route, because I think that one of those routes has a crashed ship? I don't remember. Well. Well, this is quite a torrent. 4 rivers flowing into one. Let's go left this time. What do robots know? Because we learned that all robots supposedly know the location of whatever we're trying to find. They're not able to know that they know it. Now, we've hit El-bereth, but we've got a conversation to talk through, so... Oh, they're not going to let us go through the whole thing. That's fine. It'll probably come back up again later. And welcome to El-bereth.
We landed in the dust, outside the great walls of El-bereth. No one looked up to watch us arrive. The people here only ever look down.
That writing. It just rides such an awesome line between purple and indescriptive. Well, we are going to call it here for the day, and I will see you next episode.